Okay, welcome everyone to our latest episode of Talking Data with Joel and Mike, where we keep you ahead of the latest fundraising data thinking and real experiences from sector leaders twice each month. I'm Joel Nicholson, Director of Marketsoft. We have our co-host and co-director at Marketsoft, Michael Mocatta. Say hello, Mike.
Hi.
Yep. And our special guest today is Richard Harris, that some of you may know because he has worked across the not-for-profit and commercial sectors, currently leading the AI and data consulting at Sign Advisory. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you, mate. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this week we're going to explore AI in fundraising and specifically breaking it up into like three sections. So where is it helping? Where is it hurting? And how do we govern it? This is obviously AI in general is obviously a hot topic across the entire sector and commercial world. And to give an example of that, recently we published a white paper on AI for fundraising, and within the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had over 150 organizations download the white paper. So Mike has led that white paper. So incredible demand, but ultimately putting into practice is where the rubber hits the road. So so to kick things off, a question to you, Richard, and starting into where it helps in your world. Where does AI actually deliver value?
Sure. Before I answer, I should probably just clarify that I don't actually lead AI at Sign. There's lots of people far senior than I am. I'm a cog in the wheel when it comes to working with clients. But my experience, as someone who watching might know, is I teach courses for the Fundraising Institute, both in data privacy and in AI governance as well. So I won't be speaking on behalf of Sign today. But as someone who's been in and around the not-for-profit sector for some time, where am I seeing AI help? Operationally, it really boils down to that. Particularly if we can also differentiate between the AIs that we're talking about, because you have Gen AI, your Copilot, your Gemini, your Chat GPT, which has a very specific role and function and can do some many useful things. But then you have your AI that you can build new models with, you can build dedicated agents to automate workflow. So in terms of where it's offering a lot of advantage, well, the latter is a very clear one. The ability to automate repeated tasks, do it efficiently, do it with a high degree of trust and not requiring an awful lot of coding for it to be done, is offering a lot of opportunity. And I guess we can talk to very clearly some great examples of that. So you picture what a lot of organizations have now, a chatbot on their website where people can ask, in the not-for-profit sector specifically, what kind of work they do, where their services go, any kind of questions you might want to ask. You can now design an AI assistant that can maintain and have that conversation pretty well and escalate to a human if it runs into a question that it's not designed to answer. Internally, though, for a lot of people, the ability to quickly draft research information or to consume a very complicated technical document and use Gen AI to summarize it and get to the heart of what they're interested in. That can be a big time saver and be useful for a lot of people. So there's definitely a lot of advantages that AI is offering. And for the most part, those things are where it offers the ability to take a lot of the repeated, less engaging tasks out of human hands and allowing a computer to do it. That freeing up people to really spend a little bit more time on the things that the human brain is far better at, and is often the more interesting elements of all of our roles anyway. I personally don't like to write a 20-page document. If I can have the AI give me a first draft, I can then edit through prompts and get it to change things so that I get what I want, but it can type far faster than I can.
Yeah, no, and I agree, Richard. I think when you speak to lots of fundraising practitioners, these are pretty much everyone's using it in different shapes or forms, and but we'll actually get it to the third section, which is around the governance side of things, because that's where it becomes very interesting for organizations. But Mike, over to you on in terms of helpfulness of AI. You're got your hands deep into lots of practical applications of AI, particularly in fundraising. Do you want to share some sort of like key use cases that you're seeing
Yeah, look,
value?
well, firstly, I think just taking a step back, I think the not-for-profit industry at this juncture is still at the crossroads in terms of trying to figure out how to use AI, right? But where AI obviously helps within those sort of organisations is where it can augment existing disciplined thinking and well-defined processes, right? Because it's very good at handling repetitive type work at scale. Similar to, examples similar to what Richard was sort of alluding to in terms of whether it's reading large documents and being able to give you some sort of a quick summary to be able to assess, large documents and sort of to allow you to sort of understand, key pieces of information within across those, whether that's contractual or whether that's from a marketing perspective. So looking at marketing material and assessing marketing material, is it the right language? Is it the right tone? Is the content targeted to the right audience in terms of what the organization wants to, who they want to target? That's probably where it sort of is at this present stage. I know that a lot of organisations are trying to incorporate it into business processes and so on, but I think that's where they struggle. And the reality of it is that you can't, from a business practice, throw PII information up into these platforms, right? So though one would love to and get an interesting, more deeper piece of analysis undertaken, it's not really, you can't do that, right? So at this, if you're going to follow the privacy principles, one area of the not-for-profits I am seeing good traction in is really, across and that's also applies to the commercial sector, is where it's been used for debugging code and writing code and at its raw level, right? So processes and so on, where people have inherited SQL scripts, Python scripts, whatever it might be, and they're using AI to either debug, enhance, or understand what those scripts are doing. And that's probably where I'm seeing the immediate benefit, right, in those sort of businesses.
Yeah, so some of the CRM audit type work is revealing some of that sort of buried code that's legacy in a lot of charities. That's cleaning it up, which is great. And,
Yep.
and I agree with you, Mike, there as well on that side of where, for me, like where it's actually having the potential to bring together data and creative for the first time. So often in my world and probably our worlds, creative has been over on the far side of the room, and data and technology has been on the left side of the room, and AI is actually giving us the ability to actually bring the two together, because it can actually interpret those intents and profiles and really groups of people that are going to engage with that message, and then we can line it up to the data. So that's really interesting. Okay, so well, that's kind of bit of a snapshot of some of the helpful pieces. Where do we see it hurting? And maybe back to you, Richard. Where do we see the gaps or maybe misunderstanding of what AI is doing for us, and
Yeah.
the issues? And given your extensive privacy background, there might even be some holes there.
Yeah, I think, look, Mike's already touched on that, is that getting people to understand that sharing personal information, particularly with public AI platforms, not necessarily the smart thing to do. And quite often is not, not even necessary. For me, though, it's not so much the harms, because, when used appropriately, AI offers a lot of advantages. I have seen surveys done of staff prior to AI being introduced, looking for their sentiment, and there is definitely concern out there about introducing AI might mean people's jobs will be at risk. That if efficiencies are introduced, then less people are needed, and that will have an impact. And I think that's definitely something, as people are adopting AI, to be very clear about the messaging there of how it's to be used, its intent, and what is going to happen with the time saved. If you're talking about, we're going to save you, we estimate 15 hours a week. Well, what's the expectation? Does that mean people are going to work 15 hours less? Or are they going to be doing other different things? What are we going to do with that time saved is an important messaging, I think. The other thing as well is to really hammer home that AI is quite stupid. It's not that intelligent. It's very good at doing one very specific thing, but it doesn't have general knowledge. It can't really think for itself. So the need for human oversight, both in terms of what you're putting into the AI, but also what it's outputting. Because AI, by its very nature, can try and make things up. It's there to try and please you. So if there are gaps in its knowledge, it might try and fill up those gaps because it knows that's what you're looking for, and it might extrapolate information that might ultimately prove to be inaccurate. So AI still requires human oversight. It is not, particularly again, Gen AI. If you're asking it to help you write a report, a white paper, and so on and so forth, then making sure you are reading its output, you are providing the instructions to change that output, to tweak it, to make sure that it's accurate, absolutely relies with the user. Accountability relies with the organization. We are seeing time and time again now where organizations have attempted to say, we're not responsible for advice being given by our bot because it's the bot giving the advice. That's not flying. People, if you built the bot, you are responsible for what it says. And so I think for me, that's the biggest thing that organizations can do, is to make sure that people who are given the ability to use these tools, particularly Gen AI, or build their own agents in things like Gemini and Copilot and others, is to make sure they're being given training in the ethical principles, but also training in how best to use these tools. They work best when they are your assistant, helping you do a job that you are needing to do, not to replace you to do that job. You are still doing that job. You are just using a tool to speed up. Think about it as whether or not you want to use, a manual screwdriver or a power drill to put a screw into a board. That's what we're talking about here. That you still need someone who is guiding that screw in to make sure that it's going into the right place and to the right depth.
Yeah, Richard, you raised an interesting question also, like this idea of, because a lot of execs in fundraising are all going into planning season right now for next financial year, and so obviously resourcing and strategy is top of mind, and so when you talk about 15 hours now being saved and what are you doing with that, I think that's like a new dimension for most planning programs for a lot of execs that's going to have to be well thought through.
I think that it has to be. I think that it has to be, and not to do the obvious plug, but that's of course where talking to companies like Marketsoft make the most sense, right? Because that's where getting these nuggets of information and again making sure that training is done properly for people is essential. But yeah, it's only come up recently, this idea of what do we do with the time saved. But in terms of messaging, people, not everybody, I think a lot of people understand the benefits, but there is going to be a section of employees are going to feel threatened by the introduction of AI. And that messaging should come through clear about, well, once you're freed up, this means what we can do for you is this, expand, we can go into, new initiatives, we can try new things. Everyone is time poor right now. So if everyone thought to themselves, gosh, if I just had a few more hours a week, I could go and do this really interesting thing over here. That's what the conversation should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I would add to all of that is a few things. Firstly, in terms of the job scenario, yes, there will be certain AI jobs that outside of the US that could be businesses could take advantage of from an AI perspective. But currently, I think it's important to point out is that to be able to do it properly within Australia and other countries outside the US, you need sovereign AI. And what does that mean? You need AI that's in country under your control. If you're using AI such as ChatGPT, Gemini, and all those which are US controlled, under the Patriot Act, the US government can actually at any time, just like the Chinese government, can look at that underlying data if they desire to because of terrorist reasons but they don't even need a court order. So, for example, within Australia, if an Australian business is operating and the Australian government wants access to underlying data, they need a court order. The US, that doesn't apply under the Patriot Act. So if any Australian government organisation or business organisation that has sensitive information and they're using these platforms, just be aware that that data that they're putting into these platforms can be accessed by a foreign entity at any time they choose. I think we're, in real terms, if businesses were more aware of the legal implications around, the use of some of these technologies, they may be going, okay, well, we need to wait until we see this technology onshore that we can actually leverage in an ethical and privacy compliant manner. And then in terms of the hallucinations that Richard's referring to, yes, the reality of it is AI will hallucinate. And that means that currently, and I would say in this part of the timeline in terms of development, and even though there's been a lot happening around ChatGPT 5 and the latest Grok and so on to eliminate hallucinations, they're always going to be there, and so therefore, how I look at it is, if you're a brain surgeon using AI, you can benefit from it. But if you're not a brain surgeon and you're trying to use this technology to carry out some sort of brain surgery, you could be making the worst mistakes on earth, because you need, in my mind, at this juncture, you actually need to be an expert in the field or have very strong knowledge in the field that you're using the tool for. And I like the tool of the power drill and the screwdriver. You still need, when you're putting that screw in, you still need to know the knowledge of you're putting the screw into something that's got purpose and it's going to hold or whatever, right? You just don't put screws all over the place. And then just very quickly, in terms of the agents and stuff like that, where obviously bots and can be rogue, I think this is where developers really need to be very conscious of the fact that you actually need multiple agents or multiple AI engines monitoring each other to get the best out of them. Right. So in the case of, if you're an organization and you've given it a prompt to say, hey, here, read from this script, and this is the script you have to utilize in this process in terms of any engagement, they will go off script if you don't have other AI agents actually keeping them in check. And that's one thing about this technology at the moment. You really need multiple AI agents working together to get the best outcome. Don't rely on just one to be able to give you the outcome that you're actually believing that what your desire is, especially when it comes to communication, unvetted communication to customers and so on.
Yeah. Richard, you mentioned you've got something to add there around shadow AI. Tell us about that.
Look, it's kind of related to what Mike was just saying as well, in that, just to sort of really hammer home the point, to torture a metaphor for a second, you need to be an expert. You need to have enough knowledge to know what the AI is doing. Where this can be a real problem for organizations in particular is the shadow AI. So you might decide that you are happy with people using Copilot as part of 365. It carries with it a lot of security and trust, just because of how it's designed and integrates with your existing Microsoft ecosystem. But then you've got to think, are people going outside and using any number of the hundreds, if not thousands, of AI platforms that are available to them that don't have those similar controls as well? So that would be the other potential harm, I think, is pretty important, is to make sure that you are monitoring the endpoints, you are blocking where you can the AI platforms that you don't want people to use, that you have really strong data classification and data loss prevention controls in place that stop people sharing your highly valuable and protected information with an outside entity through an AI platform. So there are definitely things that need to happen, because people will always try and, they always think the rules don't apply to them, and they will try and look for a more efficient way of doing things. And so, if you're not giving them an access to a tool that they want to use, they inevitably might find a platform that you might not trust. So, shadow AI is definitely an area to be very conscious of.
Because, we're starting to sort of merge into our third section around governing AI. But before we do that, I just wanted to sort of bring it back to a pragmatic piece for our audience. And Mike, we talk about obviously around how data needs to be prepared for AI in the right way. Otherwise, it's you're not getting the most out of your AI, and that can really be a real cross section of how you're prompting or what sort of training you're doing with the model. You spend a lot of time in that particular space, and it's quite a practical thing, which I'm sure a lot of our audience are just still learning a lot on what's good practice. Any thoughts to share there?
Yeah, in terms of information, what information you share with it, obviously you need to really plan it out and think about it, right? So what documents are relevant? Obviously, you've got to take into consideration sensitivity of information that you're encapsulating into these areas. I know, like, there's a big trend at the moment is using Gemini and the Pro version and all that sort of stuff, where it's reading quite a lot of information. You can throw a lot of documents, emails, and so on. There is some question mark around, in my mind, the level of sensitivity and protection of that data. But let's just assume that you're able to share quite a bit of information with it. It's very important to be able to think of it as a project. You sort of defining what documents it needs to review, and then building your prompts around how it reviews and accesses those documents in terms of the type of outcome that you want it to undertake. So it's a very much in my mind, a very much of a multi-step process. Do not go about it as a big bang type process. You've got to think about when you're dealing with AI that you're a kid at a sideshow. You've got so many coins in your pocket. You want to go on lots of rides, but you got to spend your money carefully, and that's time and questions, right? In limited chunks, because if you try and go on every ride at once, you're going to run out of money, and you won't get the best outcome. So you're basically chunking down the interaction with the AI platform to get the best out of it. You got to be thinking about it in terms of bite-sized chunks. Now, one of the things that's happened over the last 6 months is that both ChatGPT and others have got this deep think, longer thinking periods. Part of that is automatic in some cases. Other cases, it's you need to let them know to turn into that mode. But even with those longer, deeper thinking periods, you still need to guide it through and keep it focused on what you want to analyze and what sort of outputs you're after. So it's a you feel like you're almost without being too crazy, but yeah, you feel like you're guiding. You have to guide it through a series of gates, in my mind, to get the best outcome. Don't try and go from A to B and think you're going to get a really good outcome. This is where hallucination, all those sort of different things start coming into it. That can completely put you off track in terms of the outputs.
Yeah, I agree. And this is where a lot of people talk about there's still a very strong need for subject matter experts hand in hand with AI to create that best result. All right, so wrapping up into our final bit here around governing AI or governance. Obviously, as I referred at the start, Mike actually wrote a whole white paper on this, so we could probably talk about this for hours. So I have to somehow summarize that into about 3 minutes, Mike. And then Richard, obviously, he's had a whole background in governance and privacy for the last 10 plus years. So to try and keep this section within a short period of time, Richard, what are some of the real practical things that our audience should be thinking about on the governance of AI?
Number one, apart from the obvious of developing an AI policy and an acceptable use of AI guidelines and those kinds of things, and they should be built off of the ethical principles. There's plenty of frameworks out there. The New South Wales government have one. There are several now, even at the federal level, but they all kind of center around the ethical use of AI. And so there are very easy frameworks that you can get a hold of and adopt as a structure. But in terms of the number one piece of advice, make sure that you set up an operating model for AI governance. Make sure that you have a committee that meets on a regular basis to assess and understand how AI is being used, what kind of risks are being introduced, how they're being managed, all of those kinds of things. And don't treat AI as another piece of technology that will just go through the same cybersecurity reviews as you have done with other platforms. AI has some unique risks that come with it and should be treated somewhat independently. Yes, AI should wrap up into your enterprise risk register, but don't overlook the fact that it's not just another piece of technology. There are definite unique risks that you need to be aware of and be monitoring and assessing for on a regular basis. And so I think the best way to do that is to make sure that you have a group of people who meet on a regular basis and have a charter that very much spells out that their role is to make sure that AI is being used responsibly and in line with ethical principles. That's the number one piece of advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done, Richard. That was concise. Michael, yeah, your sort of final thoughts around governance and.
Yeah, look, Richard sort of touched on quite a bit there. So, look, obviously you need an AI governance strategy within your organisation. Don't treat it. I think you sort of treat it like a piece of software, but at the same time, it's a little bit more dangerous than a normal piece of software, in my opinion. Because it's something that has the tendency of people to trust rather than to put in the right checks and balances around it. So it's definitely something that businesses and not-for-profits need to treat with caution. It's got incredible power and capability and can obviously help businesses significantly, but it needs to be elevated within the overall organisation, almost like the CRM system. Like when the whole concept of when CRM was introduced to businesses and businesses were trying to decide what was the best CRM technology to adopt, what were going to be the checks and balances around that, who was going to have access to it, what sort of information was going to be stored in it, and and then all the so-called benefits off the back of that. AI needs to be treated in exactly the same light in terms of a piece of technology that needs to be treated with respect and have an elevation that can obviously needs the governance around it and who can access it, what information can be shared in it, and what are the the benefits that the organisation wants to get out of it. It's going to be more and more. AI is going to be more and more integrated in terms of our day-to-day desktop type environment. All the OSs are going to be incorporating it. Phones, it's going to be more intrusive, and if you don't have a strategy sooner than later, it will catch you out. It could cause serious problems within an organisation if not managed properly.
Yeah, probably one of the most common things I'm hearing from more enterprise size organizations is that they're really this concept of human in the loop and always having a human involved in each of these decision-making processes of what new application are we going to expose to the organization, or what other platforms could we consider. It's always having some level of authorization. So that's one thing to take away. So to wrap up with our maybe final question to both of you or all of us, is what would be like the one, like a minimum thing our teams should implement this quarter? So we're talking like the next 90 days. It could be both from right at the start, from the value that AI gives, the harm that it gives, or the governance that needs to be applied. What do you think? If there's one thing this quarter they could put in place?
Easy. A policy bot. Take all of your existing, HR policies, cybersecurity policies, privacy policies, your staff benefits, all those kinds of things, your annual leave policy, but all that kind of stuff. Chances are they're all in Word or PDF versions. And give yourself the experience of building an agent for yourself. It's a good opportunity to learn how to write an instruction for an agent. You upload the knowledge in the form of the policies, Make sure you give it instructions that make sure it only uses information from those policies and you avoid hallucination. Just give yourself a practical exercise. Write yourself an agent that you can query and ask natural language questions like, what is our policy on maternity leave? Or how much can I claim on my mobile phone each month? That kind of thing is a great way to sort of learn and get experience in a nice, safe environment, because you're not using anything that isn't usually published publicly anyway, or at least well distributed. It's not highly sensitive information. You're not asking it to calculate things, but it also is content that you have very clear control over. So for me, I think for those people who are not used to AI, who are learning the ropes, who are still trying to work out what it is, a practical exercise like that can go a real long way towards helping, demystify, particularly again, the role of Gen AI. Other than that, just take a hard look at your organization and look at what we've talked about today. Are there gaps in what you're already covering? And then take some steps to address those. Engagement with your staff is probably a critical thing. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? How do they want to use AI? What do they not want to see AI used for? Really get that engagement being. Again, you're not just giving them a new database to play with or a new CRM tool. There are paradigm shifts that come with the use of AI. So staff engagement, I would say, is another critical element.
Yeah, no, love it. I mean, I think if anything, you can draw your people closer to what the organization stands for by actually it's getting those policies out of the drawer and actually becoming more that people are starting to live them, which is great. Michael, what would your one thing in the next 90 days be?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I just knowing a lot of not-for-profits out there. There are some that are in a position to do something like that. There's a lot that are still grappling with it as a technology, and it's very much used at a personal level rather than an organizational level concept. I think the first thing would be for a lot of the not-for-profits to definitely implement some sort of AI policy as a whole, right? As well as you could put that in the policy app as well, but at least have some sort of guidelines, recommended tools as an organisation, all that sort of stuff, and how it can or cannot be used across the organisation, just to start to give people solid guidelines around the best practice, so to speak, within the organisation, and then letting the creativity side of it unfold. My gut feeling is telling me based on conversations and so on, that a lot of organisations are just it's a fly-by-night thing. Some staff are using it, some are not. Some of are getting good benefit out of it, others are not. It's an area where I just say let's establish a cornerstone and build off from that.
Yeah, and maybe leading off that, my one thing would be something that I've personally experienced is just really the education side on AI. So just just find some regular AI podcasts or YouTube videos out there. There's hundreds and thousands of them, and just keep up to speed with the latest trends and changes that are going on, because it is changing, and obviously everyone has different interests, but it's one really easy way to just be knowledgeable about AI and what's going on, and then ideally how you can apply it. So anyway, well, I think we've covered a good session today. Hopefully everyone's gained lots of or a few good ideas to take away. And but so I'd just like to wrap up. Thank our special guest today, Richard Harris.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, you have been a regular on our previous podcast, so welcome back and thank you. And to my co-host Mike, thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.